you think? Can we start? Okay, so let's start recording. Hello, everyone. We are recording now. My name is Karolina Kubiak. I'm a member of XR Empathy Circle Working Group, and this is our 10-week Empathy Cafe series on 10 Extinction Rebellion Principles. And each Saturday, we use empathy circle method to discuss and explore different principles. Today, we talk about principle number 4. We openly challenge ourselves and our toxic system. And this principle is about leaving our comfort zones to take action for change. It's it's April 2025. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my calendar, 25. And I would like to say that our intention in this cafe is to create regenerative culture of empathy. We would like to give everyone the opportunity to feel that you can authentically and openly express yourself, and you may feel heard and understood to your satisfaction. And what is important for us, it is a mutuality of this experience. We do empathy circle using a mutual empathic listening. I welcome all participants. Among us are our today's speakers, Niels Agar and April Griefsong. Welcome you. And I would like to mention also our facilitators today. We have with us Bill, Marta, Anne, Lou, Dan, and obviously Edwin is with us, who fight with technicalities today. Our plan for today's meeting is that we go for 2.5 hours because there is a lot of us in today's meeting. We decided that we will do introductions in a breakout rooms because now we will not remember each other. So introduction will happen when we split to breakout rooms. Now I will ask our speakers to introduce the principle number 4. Then I will ask one of our facilitators, Marta, to for short introduction to empathy circle method. Then we will go to our breakout rooms and discuss our today's topic, and for hour and a half. And then we will meet again in the main session for the group report of our discussion. I would like to ask now our speakers for introduction. Niels Agar is the first speaker, then April Griefsong. Niels, floor, no, not floors, the internet space is yours now.
Cool. So I just start introducing the principle, the way I see it.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Niels, and what am I thinking? Yeah, like I think I started to think about like this principle in a different way when I was doing or like delivering an XRDNA training earlier this year down in Cornwall in January, and I was doing like the story section, and yeah, we're talking about like story separation of like people being separated from each other and from like the rest of the world and like nature and all of that thing. And yeah, it was just like starting to like yeah, I think I started thinking about it a different way, like why we have this principle. And it was just like notice when I was delivering that training, I just started like think out loud, like thinking as I was going along, like not really knowing what I was saying, but more just like thinking as I was saying things and talking about stuff. And like one thing that like did come to me that I was thinking of then was like in Extinction Rebellion, like what we're doing as Extinction Rebellion is in some ways like really posing like really big challenge to society and to the rest of the world, of like saying, yes, we've got a really massive problem that we need to deal with, and like we need society at large to really step up and um, yeah, and like challenge like what we believe like society can do or like can achieve in a short space of time. And yeah, like connected to that, like if we like that is like one of the aspects of what we're trying to do, then I guess we also need to think of like how we kind of each do that. Because I like reading, I don't know if anyone has been reading Adrienne Marie Brown and her book Imagine Strategy. Like one of the things she's talking about is fractals, and which basically saying like what kind of groups of people, organizations are practicing on a smaller scale also gets replicated on a larger scale. So like if we as a kind of big network want to like pose this like really big challenge to society of like getting us to step up and whatever, then I guess we'll also like need to look at how we're kind of each doing that, or like challenging ourselves, like challenging us like in our groups. Like if we really want like yeah, kind of like a bigger picture to change, then we need to also look at like how that's get replicated in a smaller scale. So like if we all stay within our comfort zones and doesn't do anything that challenges ourselves, then we probably won't get very far in posing this massive challenge to the rest of the world, like the rest of society. And so yeah, I just find like a really interesting way of thinking about it, of like, yeah, like this is time when we all need to challenge ourselves, both as a society or like as an organization or as individuals, as smaller groups. Like we probably each need to think about like how the situation is, like yeah, what we kind of call to challenge ourselves in doing. And I guess it's also going to look very differently for many different people. Like for some people it's going to be a big, like challenging yourselves means just showing up to a meeting or like showing up to a demonstration. Like I remember when I first got involved with the activist scene or activist world in the UK, I found really yeah a big challenge just like go to things, meetings, events, demonstrations on my own, just because I was interested in it. And then I also seen like people in who've been working a bit with an XI youth who find it easier to go and get arrested in London than to speak with their family or their friends about climate change and how worried they are. And so yeah, it's kind of like how many different shapes it can take. And at times I was like, I also like do believe it's like quite a big um, source of energy and excitement, like within Extinction Rebellion as well, just of like having lots of people really challenging themselves and stepping up to do new things. It's like, yeah, like I've been involved during all of XR, like from when we was just like 10, 15 of us, we were like trying to do everything, like stretching ourselves and like covering everything. It feels like it's been changing a lot. Like at the best of times, I've seen Extinction Rebellion really being this place where everyone, or like people who have no previous experience of campaigning or organizing or doing all these sorts of things, just really feel strong. Like, yes, this is what I really want to do. Like I have no idea how to do it, but I'm really excited. So I'm just gonna jump into it and see how it goes and take that challenge. So like I also feel like that's a kind of so big source of energy, if you like, in that space where loads of people are challenging themselves to do things that they haven't previously done. If it's about organizing a group or like doing different things, like just being in that space where loads of people are really stepping out of the comfort zones is a really inspiring atmosphere. And especially with XR, which is so much built on volunteers and just people's energy and passion, I think that's also like quite a kind of important thing to like keep in mind, to like keep that energy and passion going through everyone challenging themselves and stepping up to do new things, like try to take on new stuff. And yeah, April, do you want to go next?
Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. Yes. I mean, I really loved how you talk about, the challenging ourselves. I think it's really important in this one, actually, whether it was intended or not, but that challenging ourselves comes first in this bit. I came to Extinction Rebellion with a very clear purpose in that, I was very present to the danger that our natural world was in, that included us. And I was out to shake the system up, to find people, companions on the way who were passionate and involved enough to want to rattle at the system gates and try and wake up attention. And but what has become really clear to me is that that is rooted in challenging ourselves first and foremost. Whether that be the first time you get arrested, the first time you put yourself at risk of getting arrested, and maybe it doesn't happen, and then that you're willing to do it again and again, like that, breaking kind of the first steps of stepping into an uncomfortable place. And I saw how empowering that was for people, that they would come to a decision. First they came to look after everyone, and then suddenly they find themselves stepping forward into another role, another level of risk shared with their community of people because of what it means to them. But as my journey has gone on deeper, I've been aware that there's no challenging the system if we don't drop the way the system has locked us into thinking about ourselves and our culture and our, and the world around us. It's all tied up, and it's intrinsically, educated, parented, it's a heredity that we, have been imprisoned by for a reason. It's clear. It keeps us down, it keeps us separate, it keeps us away from our power. And when we start to break those internal spells that we've been locked under, whoa, then things become really interesting. But one thing I did want to point out about this principle as well is that the whole second half of that, writing about it, also talks about challenging ourselves in regenerative care, in looking after not just ourselves and each other when we're under risk, but actually, how do we recognize burnout? How do we support each other to not get that far? How do we do good endings? I would say we haven't been very good at that yet. And, again, that's a cultural thing, but, there's a lot to ask ourselves. This principle, I think, is one of the biggest that comes to me, that could be asking us asking something of us each time we take action or step into a space with Extinction Rebellion. How am I challenging myself, and how does that empower me to challenge the system? Thank you. That's enough.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Niels, for this introduction. And now I would like to ask one of our facilitators, Marta, to introduce us to the method of Empathy Circle. Marta?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. So first thing I'd like to say is I know a lot of you have experienced the Empathy Circle method before. For those of you for whom it's new, it's a bit different from normal conversation. So it's a very way of a structured dialogue where we take turns in speaking. And so if it feels a bit weird at the beginning, you'll have a facilitator there with you in the circle to help you out and guide you through it. So, just give it a go and be a bit patient, and I'm sure you'll find it's worthwhile. So at any given moment in time in an empathy circle, there's 3 roles. There's the speaker, so the person who's going to speak. They're going to take a turn for an allotted amount of time, and that might be 5 minutes. And so before they start speaking, the other 2 roles would be the active listener and everyone else is silent listeners. And so the speaker, before they start speaking, they pick someone else in the circle with them, a listener. And so for those 5 minutes, they're going to speak to their listener, and they're going to pause every so often after they shared an idea or two to give their active listener a chance to reflect back what they've heard. And what I mean by reflect back is the listener is going to try and understand what is the speaker trying to say and repeat back to them what they've heard. And that might be repeating, paraphrasing, using your own words to capture the understanding. And then the speaker will share some more, and you'll reflect some more, and you carry on like that for 5 minutes. And then after those 5 minutes, the person who was the listener becomes the new speaker. So they pick someone else that they're going to speak to, and they share for those 5 minutes. And so it goes around in a circle over the hour and a half we're going to do this for. When you are the listener, really you're trying to be very present with the person who is sharing. And so you need to be mindful that really it's just about what they've shared. And so you're trying to not ask any questions or add any judgments or your own ideas, analysis, interpretation, any of that really. It's just giving them back as best as you can what you've heard. And it might be useful at times because ideas might emerge while you're listening. It might be useful for you to have pen and paper nearby, just in case this an idea comes up of your own, that you can write a note down instead of having to speak of your own idea. And so you're really trying to be with this other person and just repeat what they've said. And so you do this for the 5 minutes, and as a speaker you want to check in with yourself that what you've heard reflected is what you meant. And so you can also feel free to make corrections and say that's not quite it. You can add new information, you can try to clarify. And we just carry on. The facilitator will have a timer and they'll show it to you, but bear in mind that you don't need to cut your sentence or your idea halfway through when you see the timer. It's just an indication for you to wrap up whatever you're saying as a speaker, or if you're reflecting to finish that reflection, but then move on. And we have this thing of saying, if you get to the end of that share and you feel like you've been listened to, then you can just say something like, I feel fully heard, and that will indicate to your listener that now it's their turn. And it's really interesting, everyone else in the circle, the silent listeners, how your attention changes, from when you're speaking, when you're actively reflecting, or if you're just paying attention to the whole process. And that's your role really as a silent listener. You're helping hold the space with everyone else. Yeah. Don't know if there's anything I missed, Carol.
No, I think that's a very good introduction. And we will now split into smaller groups in the breakout rooms. I would like to ask Edwin to guide us how you divided us, how many rooms.
Yeah, I just put it into the chat window, the rooms. There's 6 rooms. Carolina, the facilitators are Carolina, Bill, Lou, Martha, Ann, Jordan, and Ava. And so those are the rooms. And yeah, and just as a reminder.
We don't see it in the chat.
Oh, you don't, oops, you don't see it in the chat. That's probably send it to as a private message to someone. April. To everyone in the meeting. There you go. I think that should to everyone.
Eva also wrote in the chat that she's got to leave. Don't know if that.
Oh, okay. Then.
So maybe you should ask Dan. Maybe.
I did. Dan is in that room too as a co-facilitator.
Oh, that's
so
great.
It was the 2 of you. So if you'd take over, Dan. Yeah, and okay. I guess just remind people to introduce each other in the.
Yeah, so that's what I would like to remind everyone to introduce. I ask facilitators to remember about introduction part. So we will say our name, location, XR group we are member of, and then we will start practice. And can you say which room is recorded?
Oh, if everybody records, if the facilitators would record, unless somebody doesn't want to in your room.
Please check if you have this option of recording, if you can record.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
Okay,
I don't.
Oh, thanks for checking.
Then are you and you are muted?
I don't have that option, but maybe someone else in the group could do it for me. I don't know who's in the group.
I'll get that set.
Now it should change. Dan, can you record?
I have the record button. So as soon as we move into the breakout room, you just want me to ask everyone if they're willing to be recorded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to introduce themselves and to ask if we can record.
And we're doing 5-minute turns? Is that what you want us to do?
How many people in a group?
It'll be 4 or 5.
Okay, so 5 minutes is okay, I think. Unless you feel your group is too big, you can make shorter time. So everyone has enough turns, enough rounds to speak. Can we start?
Yeah, I'm making, I don't know, and I couldn't find you to record, so maybe your group won't be recorded. So we're going into the rooms.
Okay,
I'll
thank
keep
you.
at it.
So I will be our facilitator. And maybe we will start, Edwin, can we start together to model the process as we usually do?
Yep.
Okay, can you speak first?
Okay, then yeah, excited to be in this group. I put some of the co-founders in this group, so that was intentional.
I'm sorry, I did a mistake. Let's stop.
Oh, introductions. Yeah, I'm Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, as well as from the XR Empathy Circle Work Group. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yep.
Would you pass on to somebody?
Oh, April.
Yep, April. I'm in Scotland at the moment, and I work in Guardianship and Visioning Circle. And I've been around a while. I'll pass on to Niels.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Niels. I'm from Sweden, but I've been in the UK for soon 5 years. And yeah, I'm based in Bristol in the UK since the last year or so. And yeah, have been doing quite a bit of work with XR Youth since, it's like me and 5-6 other people started it last year, and the International Solidarity Network. Pass it on to Ian.
Hi. I just spotted this on Facebook today, so I thought I'd better show off as I'm being asked to speak to one later on in the series. So thought it seemed rude not to turn up, so I'm glad I'm here. It's first nice to be in a room with Niels again. Don't bump into each other that often anymore in XR. I'm on Guardianship and Visioning, and like I've been here around even longer than April, I think. And I'm in the north of England, and I will pass on to Carolina.
Okay, so now thank you. My name is Caro. You can call me Caro simply. I am a member of Empathy Circle Working Group with Edwin, but I'm also a member of Global Support Regenerative Cultures Working Group, and obviously my local group in Poland, Gdańsk. That's me. So now we can start modeling the process. Edwin, would you start?
Yeah, I'll just speak to you then, Carolina, just to model it. So yeah, I'm doing tech support this time. So part of my attention is kind of monitoring all the other rooms and stuff like that. So if you don't see my full attention, that's why.
So you explaining yourself that you doing today technical support, you are focused on technicalities, so you can't be fully present. You're afraid that you might be distracted by some other stuff, and you trying to explain us.
Yeah. And then, so to start with, on the topic of challenging the toxic system, I really think that the way to challenge the system is actually through empathy. What we're doing here is a challenge to the existing system. So I like to kind of start off, kind of just making that assertion that, the society is sort of based on people not listening to each other, or at least that's a aspect of it. And I think that's sort of the aspect of the toxicity, is people just not listening and hearing each other.
So you a little bit challenging our participants of our circle, because you're saying that you believe that the real challenging ourselves and is empathy,
Mm-hmm.
practicing empathy, and this is what we need to do to actually go outside our comfort zone, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're practicing here.
Even more than the comfort zone, that is the challenge to the system, right? The system is hierarchical. Certain people get heard, certain people don't get heard. And so if we bring the people who don't get heard, have a voice, together with the people who do have the power and so forth, and they have a mutually empathic dialogue, I think that is one of the biggest challenges to the system.
So you think that practicing empathy is challenge to the system that is hierarchical, organized in a way there is no place for empathy, and we're challenging the system practicing such listening, mutual.
Yeah, and I would say it's not that there's no empathy, it's low empathy. I mean, people are
Low.
very
Okay.
empathic throughout society at varying levels. And so it's kind of the low, I would say there's, even within XR, there's plenty of low empathy. I mean, there's this big conflict between XR US, XR America. They're not talking to each other. So there's sort of a, if you want to challenge the system, it seems to me those sides need to start talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. So you're correcting me that you didn't say lack of empathy, you say low empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And you observe that even inside our movement. You mentioned the conflict within XR US and the XR America, and there were a lot of such tensions that you believe are the effect of low empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a toxicity, right? That conflict is sort of the essence of toxicity. Cortisol, a lot of cortisol kind of, conflict coming up. That's kind of the essence. So, yeah.
So you think that those conflicts are you mentioned hormones of anger, conflict,
Mm-hmm.
aggression, and you think this is the toxicity we have to challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
thank you. So Edwin ended before his time. The time is 5 minutes. Usually when time is up, I show my telephone to indicate the time is up, but it doesn't mean that you have to end in the middle of the sentence. Please continue, finish your thought and reflection, okay? So this is just the indication of the time. And now it's my turn. I become speaker and I'm choosing another listener, and I would like to ask April, would you listen to me? April.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I start timer. Oh, I'm very nervous because I'm facilitating a huge empathy cafe, and English is not my first language. It's difficult for me. It's a real challenge today for me. So please, I ask you all for being merciful to me.
And I hear you demonstrating the principle of challenge, feeling challenged, challenging yourself by taking on such a big role.
Yes. When I think about our today's principle we discussed today, I'm not thinking about going to the streets, hitting the streets and protesting. I'm thinking about culture, quite similarly to Edwin. I'm thinking about culture paradigm. We need to challenge and we need to change ourselves. That's my challenge. I stop there.
Yep. When you're thinking about this principle, you know, your attention is not focused on the action bit of XR, but really on that principle of challenging ourselves.
Yes. And I'm thinking about the culture that brought us, the civilization that brought us to the brink of extinction and catastrophe. And that's what is toxic for me. That's what we need to change with different behavior. But the problem is that this culture is in us, in every our habits, in our language, in our relations with others. It's everywhere. We bring this culture into our movement with us. So that's why it is so difficult, because we want to create different word, better word, but we are part of the old world. That's the challenge. That's the problem we face.
Yeah, I hear you really naming the key problem, even though you can see that you want to challenge the system, the society that has brought us to this awful, you know, brink of an end, perhaps, and then recognizing that we are that culture. We've been, you know, this is built into us, and we've brought it into the movement with us. So unless our behaviors change, we're not going to see it change, even within the movement.
Yeah. And I observe that in every meeting of my local group or working group I'm a member of, because I'm a member of few working groups. I observe in our reactions, in our language, in difficulty of sharing our feelings. We are not, very often we don't know how to share how we feel. We are very opposite to open, close, shut down to each other.
So observations, especially in your local group, this kind of regular meeting of people, you're observing that people aren't able to access their emotions and share that in an authentic way, and that it feels closed to you. People are locked up.
Yeah, for me, the first challenge is to build community of activists. Community of activists that survive whatever will come. That's the first thing.
Yeah, so the principle, the first aim really for you is a culture of a community of activists. Thank you.
Thank you. My time is up. Now it's your turn and you pick up another listener.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to invite Niels to listen.
Cool.
There's I recognized that, you know, I came into engagement with this principle really with that second half of it, you know, that somehow I wanted to take part in something that was going to effect change and open up the box of the toxic system. And what I've gotten kind of deeply present to is that, like Carolina was saying, you know, that toxic system is me. You know, I'm an expression of it in all my trauma-filled ways of behaving.
And how do you feel like it's changed since then? Because you said you were starting
Niels, I'm sorry to introducing, I pause. What we're trying to do, you don't ask questions, you don't dialogue, you're trying to reflect what you heard from April. Then will be your turn and you will try to express yourself, including questions you want to ask. Now just try to share with April what you heard from her. Okay, let's try.
Okay. So, yeah, so you said you started a journey thinking about it in that sense. So it sounds like it's changed since then.
I guess that was the second part of that sentence, kind of realizing that everything that I saw was toxic in a system. My journey with Extinction Rebellion has opened me up to that being present in me in so many ways, in behaviors, in habits, in addictions, in ways of coping when I'm tense or stressed, in reaction. So
you try. Let's give Niels time.
Yeah, I'm just trying how to rephrase that.
Would you help him, April?
I guess, I mean, this for me is the perfect, you know, this is really challenging. I found this really challenging the first time I did it. The temptation is to kind of, is that when someone expresses themselves well, I just want to share back their words. And it's taken practice and time to recognize that I just need to share a little kind of my understanding of what it is that I've heard them say. Oh, I've heard you say that you're an expression of that toxic system. I don't need to layer all the bits. It's like just a reflection that says, I've understood you. And you could reflect that.
What you
just saying that, I understood you.
Try.
I guess we're just saying, just kind of encapsulating what it is that you understood. You know, I understood that this was a challenge for you in the beginning, that kind of.
Okay.
What you picked up from what it is that I said.
First try might be just repeating what April said. It might be weird for you, but you can just repeat what she said. It's a first step.
Yeah, I think I'm just getting a bit lost. Now I'm just not really sure where we are anymore.
I guess we're continuing because for me, this is kind of this is an example. So I'm still carrying on. So this is me saying something you could reflect. It's like, this is an example of being uncomfortable. Like, so I'm uncomfortable making you uncomfortable. So we're both in a place of uncomfort. So it could be like, oh, well, you know, that's enough. Let's not do this again. And yet the challenge is that there's something, a treasure in the distance somewhere, that if I stick with this, I trust that people who've been working this for a long time are telling me something. I'm going to get something, a treasure out of this.
I will try reflect to show how to do that. So I hear that you're talking about your first experience with empathy circle, how challenging it was for you, April. And you also noticing that you feel uncomfortable with the situation, making uncomfortable Niels with this situation, because Niels feels lost in this exercise, in this practice. And you also said about something that might be not clear for me. You said that the thing is to connect to to live something we think, and to go to journey with somebody else. That's what you meant?
There's definitely an element of that, in that I'm certainly trusting that somebody else, the passion that and the way that they have shared it with me has given me a sense that there's some treasure to be gained by staying with the discomfort.
So you stay with discomfort of living your own point of view, and you join the perspective of somebody you reflecting, and you trust this process, that there is something in somebody speech, in somebody sharing, that is worth to listen and to heard. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I
Okay.
feel heard on that one. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Niels, now it's your turn. You will be speaker, and you choosing your listener, and you will share your thoughts, and please do pause to let the listener reflect back what you're saying.
Okay.
And I see that Jan wasn't speaking, didn't participate yet.
Yeah, Ian. Listen.
Okay. So now you can share, Niels, for 5 minutes and exchange with Jan your thoughts. It's your time.
I'm not sure about like what else to say about principle, since I was already talking about it before. So I'm not really sure like where to pick up from that.
I hear you say, or I feel you're uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable with the process, and you're aware of repeating yourself, maybe taking up more space than you need to.
Yeah, I think I was just like a bit confused of like what the process is, or like what's happening. And yeah, it feels also weird, like since I was like trying to like gather all my thoughts about it, to talk for a few minutes about it, then yeah, it feels like odd to like just try to talk more about it without, since I don't like try to gather all my thoughts, like talk about it. And I felt like, okay, if I just like said all the thoughts I had about it on top of my head, then I'm not really sure like where to pick up from it from there.
So I think you feel slightly uncomfortable with the process because you're not sure exactly how it works and why there's even a need for you to maybe say things again.
Yeah, and I think also like feeling odd just like say things by myself without it being a kind of dialogue or thing. Or especially when it's something like I've already been saying. Like I feel it's been quite used like the kind of XR culture of like doing check-ins and that sort of things. But like when it comes to like trying to like say more about some things I've already been saying just out of nowhere, then yeah, I'm not really sure how to connect that in my mind.
So you're saying the fact it's not a dialogue makes it kind of conflict with your mental processes, and I think to me your silences always say a lot. That you always like to think. Your silences always say a lot. You always like to think carefully about what you say. Over a long time, and even in conversation, you always like to think before you speak. And this is kind of making you feel a little bit uncomfortable because you're just being asked to kind of speak directly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, don't know what else to say.
Time is up. So thank you, Niels. It's your turn, Ian.
I'm just going to reflect on what Niels has just said, that, you know, it feels there's kind of a natural end to some of these things. Does anyone want to volunteer if I pick somebody?
Yeah, you pick somebody.
You pick, yeah.
Can I pick you then, Carolina? Is that okay?
Okay, you can pick me.
Or you're strictly facilitated.
Okay.
Okay, so I feel in some ways like Niels does, and I felt the need to come here because I've been asked to speak to one of these later on. So I kind of strongly empathise with the way this is making Niels feel.
So you're acknowledging, you're noticing that you have this similar discomfort as Neil, and you decided to join one of those empathy circle before you will be a speaker. Is that what you said? You are muted.
I've muted myself again. Yeah, I'm interested in principles and values because for me they fit inside another set of principles and values that I bring from Quakerism.
So I hear you a little bit difficult. I have some difficulty to hear you. The sound
Okay.
is a little bit difficult, but you are interested in principles and values. I didn't hear why.
For me, they're a subset. They sit inside a larger set of principles and values that I bring from my Quaker faith.
Mm-hmm. So you perceive a set of principles and values, XR principles and values, as a part of something bigger that is that you bring from your Quaker faith.
And I think for me, I ask you to listen because I don't always speak very clearly. So it is kind of good practice. My partner, her English is her second language too, and she sometimes says she cannot understand me. So it's obviously something I need to work on.
So you have chosen me because English is not my first language, the same as for your partner, and you need to practice speaking in a way that it's understandable for people like me.
Yeah, English people make a terrible mess of English, and they speak it worse than anybody else, I think. And the first thought that comes to me about principle and value 4 is Quakers have a saying that what does love require of us? And often that is not to be comfortable. If I think it fits directly with this, we challenge ourselves.
So when you have to repeat that, I'm sorry.
That's okay. For me, there's an idea in Quakerism that what we do is guided by what love requires of us.
Okay,
If we act in love, what are the requirements for us to do?
Okay, you're talking about the Quaker principle of love and doing everything that every action comes from love. And this is something very important for you in XR. That our
Yes.
action comes from love.
And also that love doesn't always isn't always easy. Therefore, I think it fits with this. We challenge ourselves because sometimes the loving thing to do is sometimes the hard thing to do.
And you noticing that love is not easy. Sometimes it's very challenging. Sometimes it's very difficult to love for us. And this is a real challenge to love no matter what.
And I also wonder how, if we challenge ourselves, how that works with regards to truth and what challenge there is between love and truth.
So you bring... Go on, I'm sorry. I
That's
interrupt.
okay. That's
Okay.
I finished.
So you bring another element to this sort of puzzle, the truth, and the relation between love and truth, which is also a challenge.
Yes. Thank you.
And time is up. Thank you. Edwin, would you listen to me?
Yeah, listening.
I'm really happy to be in a circle with Quaker. It's my first time when I know that I'm talking to Quaker. So, and Quaker's community is something special for me because I was studying nonviolence and I was learning a lot about Quaker's contribution to nonviolence. So I'm grateful to meet you, Ian.
So you're really grateful that Ian is here because you've been really interested in the whole Quaker philosophy, and to have someone, since Ian is a Quaker, and you've been studying nonviolence, and the tradition is it's Quakers, and so you're really glad that he's here.
Yeah, and in first moment I didn't understand what Ian was saying, and then I realized, gosh, Quaker. And that was, oh my God. I was happy.
Yeah, at first you didn't understand what he was saying, what was the word, and then you understood,
Yeah.
oh, that's Quaker, and then it's like, oh, you got really excited, and
Yeah.
thrilled.
Yeah. And I'm happy to hear about love and truth, because I believe this is I'm not Quaker, I'm actually non-believer, but agnostic. But I agree that the crucial thing is love and truth. And this is the main challenge. And I belong to the movements, to the nonviolence practitioners and activists who believe that ahimsa, Sanskrit term ahimsa, English term nonviolence, we should translate as love in action. Love in action.
So you see the importance of love and truth, and it's part of nonviolence, and you're really resonate with the term ahimsa, which means love in truth. So
love in action. Love in
yeah.
action. Love in action. And the difficulty is that nonviolence, many of us understand as lack of violence. That's not enough. We need to act with love.
So you're just saying that some people they see nonviolence, and you're saying there's more to it. It's not just not being violent, but there's a quality of love to it that people don't realize or see.
Yes, and thank you. My time is going to the end. Your turn.
Okay, I'll speak to Niels.
Okay.
We don't see you, Niels. Are you there?
Yeah.
Silhouette.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm grateful that you're here, Niels. So if you just reflect that back.
So you're grateful that I'm here?
Yeah, and I'm grateful you're staying with the discomfort of learning this new process.
Yeah, so you're grateful I'm still staying here.
And with this new process too, because it's a different way of speaking and listening, and so it can be a little challenging.
Yes, you're saying it can be challenging.
Yeah, and once you get the hang of it, it's fairly easy, and it's fun, and it's very useful.
Yeah, so you're saying it can be useful.
And fun.
And fun.
And connecting. And it's sort of the core to conflict resolution. Like if you can take a conflict and bring it into an empathy circle like this, you can really unravel all kinds of different conflicts.
So you're saying it can be very useful for dealing with conflicts.
And so another step in terms of if someone's struggling, like you were struggling initially, I would just say for the speaker to speak in very short sentences and let the person reflect back, and then sort of build from there.
So you're saying you should speak in short sentences?
Yeah, for someone who's not familiar with the practice, like April could have spoken in very simple, sentences to begin with, because it's easier for the listener to reflect back. So that's a good starting point, just to kind of make it easier for the listener.
Okay, so yeah, you're saying it can make it easier for the listener.
Yeah, and that's the speaker can help. And I'll just tell a story. Like, we did a family empathy circle, and my mother is just not a listener. She cannot listen. So and she just tells these ongoing long stories, and it's just it's just, but she can't listen. It's like, it's amazing. So just reflect that back.
Yeah. So you're saying your mom is not very good at listening.
No. And then once I just said to her, when you tell long stories, I have trouble following them. Can you just tell me what you heard back? And she said, I don't know what you said. It's too complicated. And then I said, well, when you tell long stories, it's hard for me to follow. She says, you don't want me to tell long stories. And I said, no, all I'm saying is, and so it took 5 times just for that one sentence for her to be able to reflect it.
Yeah. So you're saying it took a very long time for her to reflect a short sentence.
Yeah. And but when she finally reflected it after 5 times, it felt so good that finally I've been heard by her, right? Because she's just not a very good listener. And then she finally heard me, even that one little sentence, and it felt really good for me as a speaker.
Yeah. So you're saying it ended quite well then?
Yeah, it felt good. Yeah. I guess I just want to hear back that it felt really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're saying it felt really good for you.
Yeah, yeah. So again, grateful for you sort of sticking with this.
Yeah, and you're grateful that I'm still in the process.
Yeah, yeah. I feel fully heard. Thanks.
So Niels, it's your turn. You become again speaker. You can speak about principle. You can speak whatever is alive to you, and you choosing your listener.
Yeah.
I think April didn't speak for a while, so.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna skip because I'm still I'm really feeling quite well. Because I just don't really feel like I'm in the right headspace. Really, keep doing this at the moment.
April, would you? So I'm hearing that that you don't feel very well with doing it, and you want to skip your turn.
Yes. Yeah, I just feel like I'm struggling too much with it.
You feel that you struck too much with it.
Yeah.
Is there more?
No, I don't know. Don't feel like I have enough energy for it, like keeping on doing it. So yeah, but thank you for holding the space, like organizing it. And
So
I will leave you to it.
So you feel like you don't have energy to continuing this, but you are thankful for holding the space and doing it.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna head off.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll see you.
Bye. April, would you listen to me?
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm sad a little bit that Niels drop out, but it's his choice.
Mm. Yeah, I hear remorse that you know, a participant chooses to drop out.
Yeah, because he doesn't feel comfortable with the process. That was a challenge for him.
Mm.
Maybe not a good moment for him.
Mm. Yeah, that you heard it was a challenge for him, and that it wasn't that he maybe this wasn't a good moment for him to take part in it.
Yeah, yeah. It might happen to every one of us, I believe.
Yeah, and it could happen to anyone.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Thank you.
Whom you choosing?
Yeah, I'm thinking, actually, I'd like to speak to Ian. And I guess, actually, you know, this has brought up one of the pieces that I found challenging myself in Extinction Rebellion is not enough silence. I really appreciated when Niels was struggling that there was a lot more silence in between the talking, and I could see that it was uncomfortable for him, and it felt really different to me when there's silence between people's words. It feels like they're really thinking about it. I'll stop.
Yeah, you say that you appreciate the silence and you empathise with Niels and his more clearly expressed need for that, and possibly that he needs time to reflect on things before he speaks. And that you wish that was more common to more work in exile.
Yeah, it's not that I yes, everything to that, and the kind of the empathy for what seemed excruciating to Niels, but felt spacious and like someone was considering something to me. And what I've missed in Extinction Rebellion, particularly in meetings, is gaps between people talking. Is, you know, people stack, they even say the word stack, and there's this, feels like a queue of people waiting to talk and no gaps. And for somebody coming from not a businessy background where meetings happen like that, I found it really silencing to have no consideration time, no time for words to land.
You find a lack of gaps and spaciousness oppressive, and that this is because a lot of people come from a kind of efficiency orientated business background, and you find that quite tiring and sometimes limiting.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it may not even be businessy. It may be that we're trying to recreate an efficiency or a competency or a businessy atmosphere. And that you also have been someone who has brought silence, the value of silence into those spaces, something I've deeply appreciated in our guardianship engagements, that we've allowed that silence starts to have a seat at the table.
You acknowledge that I bring some silence to, particularly in the guardianship meetings, and how that is sometimes a useful quality. That maybe that enables things to work differently and have a different quality about them.
Yeah. And in working with Dominic Barter around restorative practices and restorative systems, again, that for me, reaching for something that I've engaged as a restorative pause, you know, the restorative bell ringing for a pause for at least 3 deep breaths, which can be in moments of tension, but it can also be in moments of awe and celebration, and kind of it allows just something that feels more like a body sense and less like a straight from head to mouth.
You resonate strongly with Dominic Barter's call for a restorative pause, which allows for an interruption between the head and mouth connection, so that something else can come in, and that, say, that can be anxiety inducing or joy inducing, depending on who you are and the circumstances, that space and that pause.
Thank you. I feel well heard.
It's my turn to nominate someone now.
Yes.
Edwin.
Listening.
It was interesting what you said about your mother, that she can't listen. Because I find about myself, I want to listen, but for some reason, I can't always pick up detail.
So you just find it interesting. I was saying about my mother and not a good listener, and then you're just noticing with your listening that it's hard to sometimes pick up detail when people are speaking.
Yeah, I think what we've noticed in XR sometimes is that a lot of groups and working groups and that are split along sort of neurotype divides. And I think this, where it demands you to speak on demand, is particularly challenging for someone like Niels, who I've known a long time, and he always waits before he speaks. And I used to find it difficult engaging with Niels because the silences would be so long, and I'm used to the quick-fire conversations. Actually, now I realise that's actually a very interesting quality that he brings.
So you're just noticing that Niels usually has a lot of space and just before he speaks, and that you're used to sort of a quick, rapid dialogue, and you do have appreciation for what Niels is bringing.
Yeah, but there is all, I think there's specifically this thing about neurotypes and how people differ, because I don't think it's because Niels is thinking in a second language. It's because his neurotype is different to most people's. And actually a lot of the people who are around very early on in Rising Up and XR are all very different to normal.
So you're just seeing there's sort of neuro differences, neurotypes, different types, sort of a spectrum, and the people that started with Rise Up are not typical normal sort of neurotypes.
Definitely. And then maybe going back to this principle of value, and what I think is what you said earlier about empathy and trust and low empathy. Because I always wonder if low trust creates low empathy, or low empathy creates low trust. And is there a third part to that equation, which is low knowledge and how they might interplay.
So you're looking at these different values of empathy and trust. Does low trust lead to low empathy, or low empathy lead to low trust? And so just kind of looking at the relationship and then thinking, oh, there's maybe even a third quality of knowledge. What role does that play with those values or qualities?
And when we speak of toxic system in this context, I think part of what's toxic is that it's essentially designed for one or two neurotypes. And it excludes all of the others.
So the toxicity is really that the system is just, it's made for certain neurotypes, and then it excludes others, and that maybe that exclusion, that quality of exclusion is toxic.
Yeah, and I think maybe another way that it's toxic is that, and this is only something I've learned very recently, is about this somatic responses, the responses in your body, how we're essentially instructed at a very young age to ignore all of those.
And like another toxicity is not really kind of sensing into our felt experience. Maybe we're taught not to sort of sense into what we're feeling, essentially, or sensing.
And then the challenging the system and ourselves becomes difficult and problematic because of the things that we've been taught. We don't even believe them. They're kind of deeper than that because they go in when you're really young. As a child, and those kind of things are embedded in you, that you should ignore some aspects of what your body is telling you and what your intuition is telling you, and only reflect on reason.
Yeah, so you're saying that we're taught at a young age sort of what we can kind of tap into, what we'd be sensitive to, and we're taught not to be sensitive to our felt experience. So we don't even think about that because we were taught so early to ignore that. And so you're just sort of pondering and sitting with sort of that exploration.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Then speak to April.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think the aspect of felt experience, the importance of felt experience, I think is very much part of the empathy. You know, empathy is in feeling, is what the term means. So it's how do we feel into our own felt experience, our own sensations, as well as the sensations and feelings of others. So I think the empathy is very central to what Ian is talking about with felt experience.
Just to pick up, I don't know if anyone else is getting it, but there's a bit of oral distortion for me there. Was that just me?
Just me? I think
that's... No, okay.
I have the same problem.
Okay.
I think it's my camera making that. Maybe it's better now.
That seemed better. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. I picked up that you felt that empathy very much was in alignment with what Ian was talking about, felt sensation, and that in feeling, was that what you said?
Yeah, empathy is M, which is in, and pathy is feeling. So it means to feel into.
So the etymology of the words, you know, literally means in feeling. So, you know, it's very much about the body sensation.
Yeah, and for our next lesson here is the word came from the aesthetics, art aesthetics in Germany. They were trying to, when you look at a piece of art, you sort of feel into that artwork, and they're trying to describe that. And they coined the word Einfühlung, in feeling. And that's sort of the origin of the word. So the word is very much grounded in the quality of feeling into something. Yeah.
So yeah, I heard you saying some more roots of the word, of how in art terms also feeling into the emotion of a piece of art or the feelings brought up by the piece of art. So it kind of all adds
context, I guess, and yeah,
context.
something
Thank you.
to the term. So yeah, so that pause, that spaciousness is a chance to sort of sense into, you know, what am I feeling? You know, it's like, well, you know, I feel some disappointment, you know, that Neil's left, you know, some concern about that. I feel a little irritation that he didn't prepare. Like there's a lot of material for, you know, how to take part in an empathy circle. And I think there's a certain sense of responsibility. So I feel irritation that he didn't kind of prepare to, you know, take part in this. So it's kind of both. Yeah. Irritation as well as, you know, sadness that he didn't, you know, that he had anxiety and stuff.
Yeah, I hear, so in feeling into what it is, in empathizing with yourself and what it is that you feel about Neil's leaving, certainly some sadness, but also some irritation in that self-responsibility maybe
Exactly.
wasn't stepped into.
Yeah, there's self-responsibility. If you're going to be speaking about something, you know, at least I would do it. I would kind of prepare for it. And, you know, and maybe we should have, in the future, I'm going to like send the link to how to take part in an empathy circle, you know, to whoever speaks and say, before you come, you know, watch this 25-minute video and be well prepared and take that self-responsibility. Yeah.
I heard you suddenly connect with your own self-responsibility and the learning here, what you could do maybe to invite people to step into their preparedness for coming to the cafe.
Yeah, because I really see that what we're doing is really central to what XR is about. That's really my, you know, my appreciation for XR, you know, that it's about, especially like the third demand, it's about, you know, citizen participation. It's like everybody taking responsibility, you know, mutual dialogue to work through issues and problems. And so what we're doing here, I think, is very central to all that, as well as that's just my appreciation of what, you know, XR has brought, you know, kind of put out there.
The lining up of what you're trying to do here and what you've heard, particularly in the third demand with Extinction Rebellion, you feel this is really helpful to really give people tools and skills to step into that kind of self-responsibility.
I feel fully heard. Thank you, April.
Thank you. Carolina, would you like to listen to me?
Yes, I will listen to you. I hope I will manage.
I'll try. You know, my sadness is that I didn't, you know, I'm challenged to talk in short blips.
Okay, so you feel challenged to speak in short parts for me.
Part of that is because part of my eloquence is triggered by carrying on talking. It's as if I catch a chain of words that are kind of outside me and just then they come in, but they come in a big chain. I can't stop them.
So you feel driven by words. Your eloquence kind of drives you, and you losing control of. You can't stop speaking when you build the thought and idea and you follow it, and it's difficult for you to stop and make pauses.
I wouldn't say that I felt out of control. But I do, I mean, I have trouble stopping and starting because I lose the train of a moment, a kind of, you know, a moment of good words, of spells or spell breakings. And if I have to break it up and chop it into chunks, I end up with silences and pauses where I have to stop and think. I'll stop there.
Okay. So you correcting me that it's not that you didn't mean a lack of control. It's rather being in a sort of track of thoughts, idea you're developing, you unfolding, and you're afraid to lose this track of idea you're unfolding, and if you when you have to pause, there is the moment when you chop your thoughts, your ideas into smaller chunks, and it's kind of difficult then to follow them.
And while it might be challenging for me, I might lose that train of thought. However, what I do recognize is that it has helped me slow down, and value the pauses that I need to kind of catch my place in a conversation. And it has helped me compact what it is I want to say into shorter spaces of time, because at meetings they don't have time to listen to 10 minutes of train of thought.
So you think that, however, you might lose this train of thoughts you build doing pauses, but this practice also help you to create shorter thoughts and pieces of ideas, because in typical meeting there is no time for long trains of ideas, thoughts, feelings. We have to make them shorter.
Yeah. So again, I guess I was linking with Edwin's kind of valuing what the Empathy Cafe has brought me in my own personal challenges with stepping into my uncomfortable space of kind of meetings and bringing ideas and keeping them short enough for everybody to listen to and not be, counting the clock or waiting for the moment of something. It's like, so yeah, there's a two-way. There's definitely, I've really appreciated this as a practice for me personally, part of my personal challenges.
So what I'm hearing you linking to what Edwin was saying about difficulty with this process, and you talking about your own challenges with this process to change your habits of speaking and building long, as you said, trains of thoughts, and trying to build a little bit shorter, more compact ideas for the meeting you participate. And it's challenging for you, and you are grateful for having this opportunity to practice that.
Yeah, thank you. I feel heard. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. Thank you. Ian, would you listen to me? First, I have to acknowledge that I experienced today a lot of problems with listening and speaking, probably because of my role in this meeting and thinking about few things at once, and it's kind of making it difficult to focus all the time and really good listening. So this is also the challenge for me sometimes when I feel like I'm not fully, I have to focus more.
So you're saying that here, in this context, the technical demands of facilitating are making it hard for you to listen and focus, but that you also feel like that sometimes in other circumstances that it's sometimes difficult to focus.
Yeah, yeah. But I like the moment when the topic is unfolding in circle, and there is the moment of kind of switch when I feel, yeah, I am in. I like this moment.
So you like to watch or hear or feel things take form, and then that puts you somewhere that's comfortable and you enjoy the process.
Yeah. And coming back to our main topic, I was thinking about our meetings and my local group and my working groups I am a member of. And I was thinking, are we a community in those groups? And I feel we are not. Are we ready for any conflicts that might come? And I feel we are not. Do we have the way to deal with any tensions? And I feel we are not. We are just a bunch of activists who share the same values and principles. And this is great because I feel differently at the meetings of XR activists and other meetings. I see the difference. We resonate with each other, but we are still a bunch of activists. We are still not a community.
So you recognize that in XR gatherings there is some special shared quality, but that we still lack resilience and robustness because of some failure to engage with something. I'm maybe not sure what that is.
Well, I noticed that, I am in a regenerative culture working group in global support, and we have a conflict resolution and resilience group inside our working group. And we receive a lot of calls about conflicts and asking us for intervention. That tells me that all the groups, local working groups, whatever, they are not capable to deal with the tensions and conflicts inside their groups. We ask somebody else, outer arbiter, to solve our problem. And for me, it's an old cultural paradigm. We're still struggling with that.
Yeah, you're noticing from the work you do with Global Regen that lots of groups still need some kind of external validation or supervision, and you're not sure why that is, but you're obviously identifying that as a shortcoming, and that possibly that's linked to not fully embodying principles and values.
I need to make a little correction. I literally mean that they call for mediator, for somebody who will solve their problem. They are not, there is no community healthy and resilient, as we say in our definition of regenerative cultures. There is no community healthy and resilient and capable to deal with the tensions and conflict if we need to ask somebody else to solve the problem. And that's, for me, the main challenge.
It's almost like you're saying that we need some grown-ups in XR, or we need to become the grown-ups, and not keep calling in for someone from outside to make things better.
Yeah, build community. Thank you. Thank you. My time's up. Your turn, Ian.
My turn. I'll go with April this time then.
Thank you.
It was interesting what Edwin said about preparation for an event, because I find if I try preparing for something, then it becomes my contribution becomes contrived, and it also makes it harder for me to listen because I come in with something I think I want to say because I've prepared it.
Yeah. You were reflecting on something Edwin had said earlier that prompted you to think about preparation and what that does to you when you prepare, that actually makes it harder for you, to listen, because you kind of got an agenda of what it is you want to say. And it also makes it harder to, I'm not sure what the other bit was. Can you just remind me?
Harder to respond to maybe what emerges or what's spontaneous.
Right, to be fully present in the moment because you're ready for your bit. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's almost this tyranny of like contrivance. Because I found in discussions, I only have any ideas in the discussion as a response to what someone else has said. So although I don't hear it well, it sparks an impression in me that then sparks a thought.
So I hear that even if you're not fully engaged in listening, you can still have things inspired by something somebody else has said to challenge a new thought to come up in your head.
It's not like being unengaged or disengaged, but it's engaged in a different way. And I think this is where Nils, I suspect, is probably even more like that. In that unless I kind of really make an effort to listen, then everything comes to me, it's impressionistic, like an impressionist painting. The small details on their own don't mean anything when you look at it close. It's just a few dots.
So I hear you, there was reflecting on not kind of correcting me on not so much not listening, but that it actually asks of you a great deal to focus on the listening. And that when you're doing that, how it comes to you is more like a wave that of kind of all the information, and rather than hearing individual ideas, you kind of the whole thing washes over you to leave an impression.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to something Carol was saying earlier, well, can't be a Quaker because you don't believe. It's more about a quality than a belief.
I heard clearly that for you, Quakerism is much more a quality that you bring to everything in your life rather than just a set of beliefs.
And that works in at least two directions, because it's qualities that I take from things. It's literally qualities rather than specifics. where we've just talked about conversation, I feel a quality of it, or intuit some quality of it, not the specifics where I can say back what someone said, but I feel something of the nature of the quality of what they've said in it more.
I hear you reaching for the word quality and kind of a laid on sense, maybe feeling. And so I'm hearing empathy described in another way.
Yeah, that's how I think I've come to the end of that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin, would you care to listen?
Listening.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much. Like, it's no wonder. It is no wonder that we are where we are in XR with tension and conflict and that reaching for, you know, a kind of parent or some authority to sort things out for us when you look at where we've come from.
So you have some understanding of the dynamics in XR, looking for the parent or an authority because of the history of just kind of our upbringing, etc.
And possibly more than anything, our inheritance.
Yeah,
and
so
I
you're
think
really wanting some understanding for why things are, maybe some care, and it's really, you're seeing that as sort of like an inheritance that we have, is this history of our upbringing, culture, etc.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I feel tears at the back of my eyes because the more that I challenge myself with the offerings that we have on decolonizing our mind and the offerings that we have on anti-oppression training and the real lived embodiment of non-violence, something more than just the absence of violence. The experience of living together, maybe it isn't community, but it is shared risk, and we are recognizing there's prosperity in that. But when I look, when those things lift the veil in my mind that told me I was okay to live the way that I've been taught, the way I've been educated, the way I've been parented, what I've inherited, the more that that is lifted off, the more that, you know, I have compassion. No wonder we're here.
So there's a real feeling of grief that when you see these qualities that have been lifted up, and maybe what the loss is of connection, and that there's a real sense of grief about that, but a sense of compassion too for the pain that people are going through.
Yeah, the pain, yeah, I'm thinking specifically about the kind of XR USA, XR America. You know, what arises in me in that is, you know, how you can call something America and not include the global majority as the first and foremost voice in that, just is perpetuating everything we're trying to break about this toxic system. Because it's a means to an end, and that means to an end makes it okay. No, it was never okay.
So is it even the name XR America, because it's not inclusive of all of America, that you're seeing that as a toxic quality? Is that what you mean? Saying?
That we would think it was okay, that it wouldn't occur to somebody. That's the toxic, that's the kind of uncovering, that's the bit that's hidden from us, because we think that what matters to us is more important, that we get everybody in America And we forget that there's a whole South America who've been suffering the consequences of this. What about asking them how they've survived? Or the Indigenous First Nations people, the question that I have to observe about that is, how come they have survived an absolute extermination process of this system and they're still here? Can we not see, what it is that we've to learn from this? Because we're going to suffer this kind of extermination under this system, whether it's a virus or an elitist system out to, get rid of the masses one way or another. Survival, cooperation, robustness, resilience. We've got to get over these tensions. We've all got to step up to making that more important than getting more people or getting our point across.
So if I'm understanding it, that there's a feeling of grief that we're not sort of seeing, there's a lack of awareness or even of empathy for all the different people in the world, be it Indigenous, South America, people from South America, that we're not sensitive to how we're impacting people in general. And there's like a sense of grief about that lack of awareness or even empathy, I would dare say.
Yeah, I think just a
close
tiny
enough?
correction that
Okay,
it's not
sure.
just
Yeah, go for
just
it.
not just a sadness, but just it is a sort of a wail of no wonder, and we've got to break the bit that's invisible. It's not just that it's made it okay, it's actually telling us to participate this way.
So it's not just feeling grief, it's like a wail of a feeling of wail that we need to kind of change. Is that close enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Inside first. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Speak to Ian for me. Yeah, I had something I wanted to respond to. Yeah, I have a sense, I like to have that spontaneity, sort of just responding to the sort of spontaneously to the dynamics of what's happened. So, being very organized and having a tight presentation or something, I feel uncomfortable with that as well. I like more of a open, spontaneous, sharing.
So you've heard what I've said, and you want to make clear that you also feel there's a value or a benefit from spontaneity.
Yeah. And
that might contribute something.
Yeah, and it's also the sort of not just reflecting back the words that someone's saying, but really sensing into the whole, physical experience of what's being said. That's kind of, I was hearing that's important. I think that's really what we're trying to get at here. With the empathy circle, is trying to really sense into the deeper kind of wholeness of the experience. So it's not just, hey, you said something and reflect back your words exactly. That's sort of maybe, to kind of help down that path, but it is the larger felt experience of the whole and being able to sort of reflect back that meaning.
You're saying that it's
kind of the intention, I think, here.
Yeah, the larger felt experience is more important than what's heard in this process.
But sometimes you got to kind of start at the beginning. Like not everybody can just kind of reflect that back necessarily. So, it needs to be sometimes some little steps, like with my mother, just 5 attempts just to be able to have that shift in awareness that she's listening to me, what I'm saying, and accurately being able to get the gist back, because otherwise she's just off in her own head doing her own trip, and just it's like very disconnecting, and it's actually very painful, so we're trying to shift the awareness. There's a shift in awareness with what we're trying to do in the empathy circle.
So you say there's a need or an aim to shift awareness, that this is particularly shown to you by the way it's allowed you to interact and maybe get your mother to understand or hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So, and so that, you know, just not listening to each other, not hearing each other, you know, clearly and deeply. If we're talking about toxicity, I think that's sort of the essence of toxicity. And, you know, there's a, and we could even bring it into the physicality of, like I was mentioning, cortisol, you know, it's the stress hormone. And then there's oxytocin, that when I feel heard, my body has like this warm feeling, you know, and it's that sort of chemically, it's like oxytocin, you know, just,
Yeah.
and so we're kind of trying to go for the toxic cortisol to the, you know, to the oxytocin feeling.
You see, you're trying to understand this process sometimes in terms of sort of neurophysiology and sort of neurotransmitters, and how this works at a biological level as opposed to a rational reasoning type level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everything is fine, whatever people want to say, you know, it's like you can say anything you want, and we just try to listen to each other. So, and it takes time, but I do think that it's sort of central to moving forward, you know, just constructively moving forward.
So you're saying that other things can go, and I wonder if that there's some inference that people are actually slightly inhibited because it's kind of a new process to them, and that maybe part of the work here is to train people to be a little bit, or maybe not train them, but allow them to be a little bit less inhibited.
Yeah, and I would say at the core, I see, yeah, Carolina, that it's a feeling of hope. It gives me hope, you know, just with, you know, struggling, listening to each other, I just feel a quality of hope for, you know, yeah, for myself and my relationships. So.
So it makes you feel like that there's the light at the end of the tunnel of this struggle of humans to understand each other.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think time is up,
Oh yeah,
General.
we have 1 minute, so.
Yeah. So I want to thank you all for this circle. And did you send the message, Edwin?
I didn't send it. I just closing the room. We got 60 seconds.
Okay. 60 seconds. Yeah.
And I've got 1 minute to say, you know, I love this, building this empathy between humans. And I ask everyone to experience that with the other than human.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy with the other than human, you know, feels like, oh, it's just, you know, so incredibly nurturing.
That was the artwork, right? With feeling into the artwork, feel into nature, feel into the animals, feel into each other.
Shamanistic kind of.
And what if we're giving that back in our beauty offerings to nature? What if it's feeling it too? Oh, I wish I'd said that earlier.
It's still recorded here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. See you in a minute.
The timer goes down.
That's right.
Hello, everyone, again in the main session. Let's wait for all us to join us. Edwin, everyone is back?
Let me check. It's hard to. They should be, or within a couple. There's a breakout. They're still popping in. Yeah.
Okay, let's wait for those who are coming back to us.
Okay. I think that's it.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. So we are all back in the main session. And I suppose not everyone can stay with us for the last part of our call and, well, feel comfortable if you need to leave. But we will be happy to hear from all of you a report from discussion in breakout rooms. And I would like to ask Bill actually to pick everyone so we made the possibly efficient way. Bill, would you help me?
I'd be happy to.
So please start with your name, location, and XR groups you are part of, and then let's share our learnings, our insights, whatever we come with from our breakout rooms.
Great. Thank you, Carolina. Okay, I'll just go around my screen and things change. So if I miss somebody, let me know. So first on my screen right now is Jamie.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you to everyone in my group. Yeah, for your honesty and like there's a lot of different kind of aspects kind of discussed. Yeah, I suppose my kind of like main takeaway is kind of like this idea that like we have to like continuously challenge ourselves rather than like kind of just like find a way that is challenging to many people and make it our new comfort zone. Yeah, that's yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. Ben.
Yeah, I really appreciated that a few of us in the group expressed discomfort about recording, and then we decided not to record. And for me, it felt like we went much deeper, or certainly I felt able to be myself more. And it was very interesting to hear other people's, what other people had to say.
Thank you, Ben. AC.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed our breakout. There were a lot of really great inputs. I think what really stood out to me was challenging this idea of individuality within our cultures, and trying to challenge it by way of collective unity, like team honesty, and collaboration. So thank you.
Thank you, AC. Lou.
Let's see. I'm grateful to have met new people, and I was very moved by one of our people. Stephen was in Uganda, had a very weak connection, and the group worked really hard to keep him included anyway. And he posted things in the chat, and we read them and reflected them. So there was a lot of creativity and a lot of commitment to keeping everyone connected and involved, and that was very beautiful to me. And I would say, content-wise, the main thing that came out was the idea that, yes, we want to challenge ourselves and challenge parts of the system that aren't working, and but that doing it with blame and shame, that it's better to do it with love than with blame and shame.
Thanks, Lou. April?
Oh, thank you. Yes, rich as always. My takeaways were, a deep well of gratitude for silence, for thinking time, and also for, this intangible quality that we call empathy. And my final thought was about empathy with the other than humans. That what that is, and often we'll talk about that as awe-inspiring and joyful and serene. And what if they feel that too? What if they feel empathy when we beauty offer back. That was my parting thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, April. Andrea.
Yeah, I would like to second. I was in the group that did not do the recording in the end, and it's worth thinking about it in some way. We did go deep. People, I think, felt unencumbered in a way, and I think we took the topic to the inside a lot. Like, what is that inside? A challenge for all of us. And I was very grateful for, like, we named female and male, masculine and feminine energies, and I think it's a crucial thing, and I was glad that we got to talk about that, and also to come to that understanding of, you know, we all have that, and we can support each other and come to a certain solidarity. And it seems crucial to where the movement is at this moment also to me. So that was my takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolina?
For me, it was challenging because one of our participants didn't feel good in a circle and drop out. So it was difficult moment for all of us in a circle. But referring to discussion, for me were two elements very important. I think that we kind of acknowledge that we are in a challenging moment for the movement. We didn't say that literally, but it was somewhere in the air of our discussion. We talk about love in action. We talk about Quaker quality in XR movement, which is which is great for me because this is a huge element, part of nonviolent action. So yeah, that was probably the most important for me: love and action, and challenging culture we live in, the culture that is in us. We want to change what? We have to change us.
Thank you,
Ourselves.
Carolina. Lizzie?
I think along with the kind of male female energy, the complementary nature of those, that there was a theme of vulnerability in our group, and for me it was how, you know, vulnerability is in one sense our strength, both individually and as a group. And for me, you know, meeting that vulnerability for myself is where I go outside my comfort zone. So that's something to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Katie?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it was interesting, and I don't know if it's me or whether I feel slightly fragmented at the end today, which I don't usually feel. But I feel there was a lot of interesting things that were spoken about, particularly the idea of what love is. And I think that would be a good theme at some point, because the way people perceive it may not be the same. And it kind of left me with that, thinking about that. But no, it was very interesting, and it was nice that I agree with Lou that we tried really hard to pull everybody in and make it inclusive, and that was good. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Marguerite?
Yes, it got very convoluted, some of our discussions. Yeah, and I felt I'm a bit more relaxed now. I've done it a few times, and so I'm not putting so much pressure on myself to hear everything. But it was good, and it was good when we had a fourth person, Richard, join us. Made it move better. Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite. Ian?
I think we enjoyed it. We went off piste a little bit and were a little bit naughty with maybe not just discussing the principle and values that are at hand, but also the nature of love and language and linguistics and truth and various other things. So it was quite rewarding and enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Dean?
I consider myself quite privileged to have been in such a warm group. I came across some activists that were really committed, and we all discussed how we should push ourselves inwards to confront change, because we've got to change ourselves in order to change others. And I was moved to tears at one point by the passion that was involved in the group, and I consider it a privilege to have been there, and I'd like to thank everyone that was in my group.
Well, thank you, Dean. Maureen? You're unmuted, Maureen. There you go.
Yes. It was very, I think, a very friendly group. Listening was powerful in that group today, I felt. And I suppose what I take away from the group is that we are, you know, Extinction Rebellion, we are meant in many ways to be confrontational, which we are at times. But a concern, you'd suppose, that this confrontation or encounter with the other is coming from a deeper place within ourselves. So again, it has been expressed in this group to other groups also, the need to go inward in order to come outwards. And then another thing, I think somebody in our group mentioned either flowers turning in, a spirit coming through flowers or something like that. I don't know if I got the poetry of it exactly right. But it strikes me that our relation, that there is that need for, and I find it in myself, that need for our relationship with nature, that we come alive with nature. We suffer when nature suffers, creation around us. So it is that we share so many ways the same spirit, that we share life at every level, and we're all interconnected. And appreciate this these encounters every week, although I missed the last two. I was busy, sorry about that. But yeah, hopefully we continue. It was good. Thank you.
Great to have you, Maureen. Anne?
Yeah, that's quite a remarkable, I just feel really privileged to sit with the other three people in my group and to hear the discussions about the toxicity of the system and the systems within the system, and about everybody, all of us, how much we are challenging ourselves to step up and step out and make change. It was an honor, and it was deeply moving and a privilege. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Anne. Richard?
Yeah, I came a little bit late. I mixed up time zones and summer times and stuff, and I was happy that the group kind of smoothly integrated me. So I felt like, oh yeah, I kind of nicely was accepted and integrated. Content-wise, what's still with me is this kind of going from toxicity, kind of what is toxic, to what is immune system, and also kind of what we explored is like what is toxic to humanity and what is kind of what could be the immunity system of humanity.
And one thing that we came to the end that kind of really struck me is kind of that seeing the inherent value of human beings and the beauty of human beings, that is the immunity system of humanity. So I found that a really powerful sentence, what I still am letting sink in. So yeah, I feel joyful.
Great, thank you so much, Richard. John Bito.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was very excited that we got from challenging the toxic system to the idea that we can bring a new story using established philosophies to give people a narrative for how things should be, and that we have there is a way to create a system that's devoid of the toxicity that is destroying the planet and humanity.
Thank you, John. Katja?
Yeah, I feel privileged to have been in the breakout room with such amazing activists. And I guess the most important thing I learned was that change starts within every single one of us, and that the change within every single one of us is important to change the toxic system, and that the toxic system is really a system within a system within a system, and it's confusing, but everything has a center of gravity, and if you knock the center of gravity, you've got it. Center of everything is money. But everybody was really awesome, and finding out about how to change myself and how to the hypocrisy of the system, and how to just listen. You know, it's amazing.
Great, thank you, Katja. Stefan?
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you for putting this thing on. It's an absolutely amazing opportunity I found, and I was with an amazing group, 4 of us, and we had 4 rounds each. And I thought after each round we got to know each other more and more. We'd be more open, we're more listening harder, and I think it just taught me what a wonderful way to communicate with people. And much more of it, please. Yes, much more. And one last thing, it's everyone in the group, I just suddenly realised how magic they were, and I really saw that and felt that. So thank you to all of my group, and thank you, Bill.
Sure, thank you, Stefan. Michael, you're muted. Michael, yeah, there you go.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, folks. Yeah, I was in a great group. Met some lovely people, and some really good insights were given. You know, we have to remember, you know, XR is a climate and ecological organization, and we should actively engage whenever we can to challenge ourselves. We all do that. We all do that on different levels, and of course, to challenge more so, I would say, to challenge the system because of ideological controls on our consciousness and our ways of thinking about the world. We definitely need to challenge that. Also, we have to recognize also XR's demands and principles and adhere to them. The demands: tell the truth. So media governments, tell the truth. Act now. Media governments, act now. The third demand: form assemblies. So all those are things we have to actively engage in. And for me, what's important is future planning for radical action. We can plan now during the COVID-19 period of reflection and insight and having workshops like this. So planning for radical action in the future. Time is ticking.
Thank you, Michael. Dan.
Well, it was quite a. I was in the group with Richard and John and Marguerite. It was an amazing session of co-creation. For me, it kind of started with the idea of where is the essence of the toxicity in the system, and for me, it's in our separation from nature. It's the inability of the system to value the intrinsic value of human life, of all life, and that because we don't have a system that does that, we have an amoral, unethical system. And so we have our technological innovation is disconnected from organic realities, and our ideologies, our economic ideology, our religious ideologies, many of our religious ideologies are also disconnected from the organic realities of living in the world. And then from there, it went from viewing the corporation as the manifestation, as a beast, in which we have to conquer this beast in some kind of a mythological sense. And then the idea that Richard kind of shared was this idea that that stories which contain this value that all life is beautiful, or this principle that all life is beautiful, can be our immunity against this toxicity. And that in essence, and this is something that there's some conflict here in some of these groups, I don't think it's so much about changing ourselves, because I think there's something inherently unethical about that. It's about stories have more agency than individuals. It's about changing the story. And it's about propagating a story where at the essence of it, all life is beautiful.
Thanks, Dan. Marta.
There's beautiful share, a lot of different voices that contributed each their own flavor. The link to the indigenous knowledge and the elderly and the elders, remembering something we've got forgotten, that we have forgotten, I suppose, in ourselves, in our bodies. And part of the work is just listening back to ourselves and each other. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Edwin?
Yeah, so our group went in a lot of different directions, but for me, I always translate it into empathy. So I saw that the toxicity was a lack of mutual empathy, mutual listening, and a lack of connection, which is sort of coming from our low sensitivity to our own and others' felt experience, and a low sensitivity to how our actions might be impacting each other and nature. And some real grief, I think, at that lack of connection, and came up in the group. And also seeing this cafe as sort of a detox cafe. So welcome to the detox cafe here.
Thanks, Edwin. And Stephen, and I hear that you may have some connection problems.
But let's try. Stephen,
right,
can
so
you speak?
You can speak, or you can type into the chat, and we'll reflect you. So I see that you're still muted, Stephen. Can you unmute? Good. All right, why don't you try speaking, and we'll see if we can hear you.
Actually, each day is a day of learning, learning and learning. So it's been very great on my side, and I really appreciate the team I've met with. Yes, my network is always ahead of me. Now, yeah, but they have been so patient to me, and truly I've learned a lot out of the giants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. Well, I just wanted to say I was really touched by my group, the depth, and we talked about vulnerability being a strength. And I would just say that, and I really see that. I saw it as my work as a special education teacher. And so I think that every time someone's vulnerable, there should be some sort of fan, some fanatic like me going, yeah, let's go. And it should be recognized. So that's what I want to say. So every time you're vulnerable, there's some kind of idiot like me who's going there and really appreciates all the inner work you're doing. I think that's the epitome of courage. Thank you. Carolina?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone. Edwin, I would like to invite you to the final comments of our meeting. Would you like to?
Yeah, it was just about sort of next steps. Yeah, we have sort of next steps. We have, again, next week, we'll be having this Empathy Cafe, the next principle. If you're wanting to, we hope that you'll continue with the practice and also start holding your own empathy circles. If you go to empathyscircle.com, there's all the information about the empathy circles. Once you do a couple of these, you get familiar with it. You're able to facilitate your own as just to get started. And then there's some facilitation trainings that we do. We have a facilitator support group that meets on Fridays, and Friday there's another empathy cafe. So we hope that you'll continue on with that. And let's see. Oh, the Friday COVID mutual support group is on Friday, and then after that we have a facilitator support group. You can come and get support for facilitating empathy circles. And I don't know if I'm forgetting something.
I just put in a chat links to our Empathy Circle working group, where you can find all our events Edwin just mentioned. There is also a link to all the principles of XR movement, rebellion.earth, on this website, so we can look at those principles. Today was principle 4, and next Saturday will be principle 5. If you want to look at those links, please copy those links, because when the meeting will end, you will lose this chat. So you need to copy those links to be able to see them later. Yeah, and is there anything else you would like to add, Edwin?
Thanks for facilitating, Carolina. We appreciate
yes, thanks every facilitator as well. Thank you very much. Thank you also those who experience difficulty and stay with us and try to be together and learn together. Thank you, everyone. And I would like to ask facilitators to stay for a while after the meeting so we can debrief. So